The last government shutdown here in 2013 caused the closure of national parks and led to around 800,000 government workers being placed on leave. Nobody here wants to see history repeat itself. A year ago, the president was celebrating sweeping to power on the platform of the ultimate deal-maker. He starts his second year with the government in shutdown and his approval ratings at an all-time low. David Willis, BBC News, Washington.
Well, let's speak now to Michael Johns in Philadelphia. He's one of the founders of the National Tea Party movement and a former White House speechwriter in the George Bush Sr. administration. Thank you for joining us here on BBC News. This is a pretty embarrassing way for President Trump to spend his first anniversary, isn't it?
Well, I think ideally, yeah, he was supposed to be in Florida this evening celebrating a year of fairly successful leadership of the country. And unfortunately, he's bogged down here, but I think very glued in to trying to see if we can have a last minute resolution to this unfortunate gross politicization of what should be a fairly routine budget process.
It is his fault, though, isn't it?
No, it's not at all. It's 100% on the Democrats. This is a budgeting expenditure. It's no for immigration issues to have creeped into it. It's completely inappropriate for Democrats to have raised it. It's hugely unpopular with the American people. I think it's going to backfire politically. And it's created a very unfortunate set of circumstances that should have been highly avoidable.
But this has never happened when one party has controlled all three branches of government, as the Republicans do. And you'll have seen those clips that have been playing for the last 48 hours back when it happened under President Obama. And Donald Trump went on television, didn't he, to say that it's the president's fault, that he is the one who needs to convene people and make this happen. Wouldn't you concede he's just not the deal maker that he promised the American people?
Well, you have to have two parties to do a deal. And unfortunately, we have a cloture rule in the Senate that requires 60 votes. That, by the way, is not a constitutional mandate. It could be subject to revision. It might be ultimately the resolution that Republicans want to pursue. But in the meantime, if you have a Democratic caucus in the Senate, which exists right now and is in lockstep with their leadership and not wanting to negotiate in good faith with the president, it's very difficult to make progress. What they put into this spending bill is completely not germane to it. It has no role in it, nor has any Democrat come forward and offered any explanation to the content of the legislation that they actually oppose. So it's been an unfortunate politicization by the Democratic leadership in the Senate. This was passed by the House fairly overwhelmingly with Democrat support. It drew some Democrat support in the Senate vote, but not the 60 required under the current cloture rule.
Would you not concede that perhaps the reality of governing is far harder than he ever imagined or thought about?
I think inside that he's not under any illusions about the complexity and difficulties of this. It is, of course, two very different things. Campaigning on the one hand, where you're speaking in fairly absolute terms about what you want to achieve, and then arriving in what he's maybe properly called the swamp and attempting to take on some very entrenched powers that aren't inclined to change. So I don't think any of the 60 million Americans who voted for President Trump perceived that this would be an easy task. Most of them remain incredibly supportive of what he's trying to do. And it has, despite this current landlock on the issue of budgeting and bringing immigration debate into it, been a largely successful year for the president, with tax reform, an economy that's beginning to hum, devastation and destruction of ISIS that had been on the move before his ascendancy, a military that's coming back into strength, and a Supreme Court nominee that is broadly popular with his base. So in many respects, it's been an incredibly successful year.
OK, Michael Johns, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you for joining us. Michael Johns joining us from Philadelphia there.